My name is John, and I'm here to share with you a story that forever changed our lives. It all started on our farm in the Midwest of the United States, a place I had always considered a refuge until the nightmare began. Our farm spans vast cornfields, surrounded by rolling hills and ancient woods that whisper old stories to the wind. I live here with my wife, Sarah, and our two teenage children, Emma and Lucas. Emma is a bright girl, always with a book in hand, while Lucas is more reserved, inclined toward music in his headphones. Our daily life was filled with hard work on the land, followed by family meals around the kitchen table. Sarah always made sure the house was spotless, despite the inevitable traces of dirt we brought in from the fields. There was a palpable serenity in this place, as if time moved more slowly here, a sense of isolation that brought us peace. But all of that changed abruptly a few weeks ago. It began with small incidents that seemed trivial at the time. A strange creaking coming from the barn at night, windows that seemed to open on their own, but we attributed them to the strong wind blowing through the hills. Nothing more than the natural whims of the countryside, we thought. However, as the days passed, these events became more frequent and more sinister. One night, I woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps downstairs, but when I checked, I found everyone in bed, breathing peacefully. What disturbed me the most that night was the feeling that something was watching our house, something we couldn't see but could feel. That sense of peace was gradually replaced by a growing sense of unease. Emma and Lucas's smiles became more forced, their anxious glances exchanged during dinner. Sarah started waking up with dark circles under her eyes, her worries reflected in the lines of concern on her once serene face. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to admit it. Not until the terror became undeniable, not just a shadow in the corners of her eyes, but a tangible presence closing in on us. This was the introduction to our journey into the unknown, where the serenity of our farm was shattered by something far darker and more sinister than we could have imagined. And so it began, the darkest chapter of our lives, where the peace of our home was challenged by something we couldn't understand. It was one of those nights that changed everything. Emma was in her room, immersed in her books as always, when we were suddenly awakened by a sharp scream from upstairs. Sarah and I jumped out of bed, our hearts racing as we ran to Emma's room. We found our daughter in a state of panic, her wide eyes fixed on the corner of the room as if she had seen something unimaginable. She was trembling, unable to articulate coherent words beyond repeatedly saying, "Something is here, something is here." Sarah held her, trying to calm her down while I inspected the room with a flashlight trembling in my hands. There was no one there but the three of us, but the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows persisted. "It must have been a nightmare, dear," Sarah murmured softly, stroking Emma's hair. "We'll stay here with you until you feel better." I wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, but something in the back of my mind warned me that wasn't the case. In the following days, we tried to maintain an appearance of normality, but the atmosphere in the house was thick with tension. Small incidents continued to accumulate, leaving us increasingly disturbed. Mugs sliding across the table on their own, doors opening or closing without any apparent reason, as if the house itself was alive and breathing. I checked all the locks and windows, ensuring that nothing could enter or leave without our knowledge. Sarah kept the kids busy with chores, trying to divert their minds from the strange occurrences happening around us. However, every time I walked through the barn or roamed the fields around the farm, a sense of being watched followed me. It was as if something was studying us, waiting for the right moment to fully reveal itself. "It's just the wind," I repeatedly told myself, trying to convince myself that there was nothing beyond the ordinary in these sounds and inexplicable movements. But the truth was that something had irrevocably changed in our home, and the normalcy we so desired seemed increasingly distant. These were the first signs that something beyond our understanding was present, something we could no longer ignore. The slowly approaching terror began to reveal itself through these small yet disturbing incidents, marking the beginning of our struggle to understand what surrounded us in the darkness of the night. It was a devastating blow to the entire community. Our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, a robust and always cordial man, disappeared without a trace. There were no signs of a struggle, no clues to explain his sudden disappearance. The only thing left was a cold silence that hung over his now vacant property. Sarah and I met with other residents in the area, sharing stories of our own strange experiences. Among murmurs and worried glances, we realized that we were all facing something inexplicable, something we could no longer ignore. It was during one of these meetings that an idea began to form in my restless mind. A connection between the sounds we were hearing and the sinister presence that seemed to be stalking us. As if an invisible thread linked each strange incident to the entity that now inhabited our thoughts. We decided to conduct a test, an experiment to confirm our suspicions. One night, when the farm was almost palpably silent, Lucas accidentally knocked over a metal can in the barn. The sound reverberated off the walls like a bell echoing through the quiet night. Instantly, we felt the change in the atmosphere around us. A shiver ran down my spine as we realized something was moving out there, something that shouldn't be there. There was no roar, no shrill sound, just a heavy silence that weighed on us like a blanket. It was a moment of pure terror as we waited, breathing carefully, almost afraid that the next move might trigger something terrible. Then we heard a distant rustling, a sign that the entity was approaching, drawn by the sound that disturbed the nocturnal serenity. Since then, we understood that any noise, no matter how small, was like a beacon for this entity. A window closed with a soft thud, an inadvertent whisper, even the creaking of the floor under our feet, all of this could be enough to attract its attention, bringing it closer to us. Now, we live in a constant state of alert, always aware of every sound around us. Each moment of silence has become precious, as we desperately try to avoid what is beyond our understanding. This discovery completely changed our approach to surviving in this place we call home. We are entangled in a silent battle, where the slightest mistake could cost us our lives. And so we continue, trapped between the need to maintain quiet and the inevitable terror that approaches, patiently waiting in the darkness. We are cornered in a suffocating silence. Since we discovered that any sound can attract the entity that hunts us, our life has turned into a delicate dance of gestures and written messages. Verbal communication has been replaced by tense looks, subtle nods, and quick notes that accumulate around the house. Emma and Lucas, so accustomed to their music and lively conversations, now move like shadows through the house, their careful steps and nervous glances revealing the weight of the fear we carry. Sarah, a woman of gentle words and warm smiles, now seems like a silent specter moving among us, her eyes always alert for any sign of danger. Tensions grow with each passing day. The entity seems to have intensified its attempts to enter our home. Sometimes we hear scratching at the windows during the night, as if something is testing our defenses. In moments of greatest tension, we feel its presence around us, a disturbing shadow that seems to feed on our fear. Each morning starts with a sigh of relief for having survived another night. Each night is a battle to maintain sanity and hope in the face of the unknown surrounding us. The simple act of preparing a meal has become a silent ritual, where the sound of a pan being placed on the stove is done with the care of a surgeon. Our sleep is light and fragmented, interrupted by nightmares that blend with reality. Sometimes I find myself longing for the return of simpler times, when the biggest problem we faced was the rain damaging the crops or a flat tire on the dirt road leading to the nearest town. But here we are, struggling not to succumb to the terror surrounding us. The house, a fortress of wood and memories, seems increasingly fragile against the silent onslaughts of the entity we cannot see but know is there, lurking. And so we continue, trapped in this deadly game of silence and survival, where each day is a battle to stay one step ahead of what haunts us. Silence has become both our ally and our worst enemy, as we wait, pray, and wonder if we will ever recover what we have lost on this journey into the unknown. We have reached our limit. Days have turned into weeks of suffocating silence and growing fear. Each breath is measured, each movement calculated to avoid the slightest noise that might attract the entity stalking us like an implacable shadow. But now, we face a terrible dilemma. The need to defend ourselves finally collides with the desire to stay safe in silence. Sarah looks at me with eyes reflecting the uncertainty and exhaustion of a battle that seems to have no end in sight. Emma and Lucas, despite their young ages, share a look of determination mixed with the fear we all feel. We decided to take a risk. We decided it was time to confront this entity directly, to try to expel it from our home once and for all. Together, we planned a risky scheme, one last effort to reclaim our home and restore our lost peace. The night is dark and silent as we begin to execute our plan. Each step is taken with care, each movement made with held breath. Our house, a fortress that now feels like a fragile cocoon, is wrapped in a silence that seems to contain the weight of the world. But then, as if it had heard our silent decision, the entity manifests. There is no loud roar, no sudden movement. It is a subtle presence that infiltrates the shadows, its lifeless eyes reflecting the darkness around us. Sarah grips my hand firmly as we face the entity, each of us fighting the urge to scream, to run, to give in to the terror enveloping us like a cold mist. The entity seems to grow in size and intensity as it slowly advances toward us, as if eager to devour the last remnants of our resistance. The confrontation is brief but intense. The air is heavy with the smell of fear and despair as we struggle to maintain our resolve. The entity seems invincible, a force of nature that cannot be contained by walls or darkness. Then the shocking revelations begin to unfold. We discover that the entity is not just a random presence, but an echo of ancient tragedies that plagued this land. It seeks revenge, seeking innocent souls as compensation for old injustices. As we fight for our survival, we understand that our battle is not just physical but spiritual. Each breath, each heartbeat is a resistance against the dark power we now face. In the end, we find a way to banish the entity, but not without sacrifices. The house falls silent, peace finally returning as if we were emerging from a deep nightmare. Now, we look to the future with a mixture of relief and sadness, knowing that we will never be the same after this ordeal. Our scars are both physical and emotional, marking us as witnesses to a horror we hope never to encounter again. This is our story, a story of survival against all odds, where silence became our weapon and our refuge against an evil beyond human comprehension.